The restaurant Cavil Park had chosen for lunch was the kind of place where the lighting was deliberately low, and the tables were deliberately far apart, designed for conversations nobody wanted overheard. Naomi had noticed that the moment she walked in. She had also noticed that the maitre d' did not check his reservation list when Cavil's name was mentioned. He simply nodded and moved. She had noticed these things and filed them away in the back of her mind the way she filed away everything she wasn't ready to examine, carefully, without reaction, available for later. Marcus had arranged this meeting. 2 weeks ago, over breakfast, he had slid a business card across the kitchen table and said Cavil Park was building a private healthcare foundation and needed someone who understood frontline social work. He had said it was a career opportunity. He had said it could change everything for her. He had smiled the way he always smiled, warm and steady, the specific kind of smile that had made her trust him faster than she had trusted anyone since her parents died and the world became a place where the people you counted on could simply stop existing between Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon. She had said yes because it sounded real, because Marcus knew things about her work, her goals, the shape of what she wanted to build. Because after 14 months of marriage, she believed he paid attention. Across the white tablecloth, Cavil was describing the third phase of the foundation's infrastructure. He spoke without filler, without performance, every sentence landing with the density of something that had been reduced down from something larger and more complicated. He was not what she had expected from the name. She was not sure what she had expected. Something louder, maybe. This man was entirely still. The structural gap you're describing, Naomi said, leaning forward slightly, isn't unique to Chicago. I see it in every city where the funding model relies on annual grant cycles instead of permanent. Her phone vibrated against the white tablecloth. She didn't look. She was a professional. She finished her point. She watched Cavil nod once. Not the performance of a man pretending to listen, the nod of a man who had just added something to a file he was building in real time. The phone vibrated again. Twice. Close together. "Excuse me 1 second." She pressed 2 fingers to the edge of the screen and angled it without lifting it. Unknown number. 1 line. "Get up and go. Don't look back." She read it twice. The words were clear. Their meaning was not. Her face did not move. 4 years of sitting across from families receiving the worst news of their lives had built her stillness into something structural. It did not depend on effort anymore. It simply held. She placed the phone face down. "Everything all right?" Cavil's voice. The same temperature it had been all through lunch. "My assistant." She reached for her water glass. "She loses her mind if I don't respond within 4 minutes. If you are brand new to Afro-Korean narratives, you picked the right story to start with. Subscribe right now, tap the bell so you never miss what comes next, and drop your city in the comments below. We read every single one." Cavil returned to his notes. Naomi kept her eyes on his face and her attention on the phone beneath her fingers, and her breathing at a pace that would not betray a single thing to a man whose eyes, she had decided in the first 10 minutes, did not actually miss much. The vibration came again, a single long pulse this time. She waited until he looked down at a document. "Marcus knows you're here. He arranged this meeting. Ask yourself why." The restaurant went on being quiet and beautiful. Someone laughed at a table near the window. A waiter moved past with a silver tray catching light. Outside the tall glass, Michigan Avenue pushed through its ordinary afternoon as if nothing in the world was on fire. He arranged this meeting. Ask yourself why. Marcus had given her the address, the time, the contact name. Marcus had kissed her cheek at 7:45 this morning and said, "This could be the one, Naomi. the project that actually fits what you're trying to do. She thought about the way he had said it, the certainty in it. Not hope, certainty. A third message landed before she had resolved the first two. He married you for your parents' money. Tonight he moves it. You need to leave that table right now. Naomi set down her water glass, picked up her napkin, pressed it once against the corners of her mouth, looked directly at Cavil Park as if she had just remembered something polite. Would you give me 2 minutes? She was already rising, her voice smooth and professional and giving nothing away. My assistant is going to call my office if I don't respond, and my supervisor will have my afternoon. Of course, Cavil sat back. And then, before she had fully turned away, he said one more thing, low and completely without urgency. Take your time. She walked toward the back of the restaurant at the pace of a woman whose biggest problem was an anxious assistant. She pushed through the door marked restrooms. She ran the cold tap. She pressed both palms flat against the marble vanity and looked at herself in the mirror. The burgundy blazer, the low bun, the small gold earrings Marcus had given her for her birthday last spring. The face of a woman whose husband had kissed her this morning. And then she called the unknown number back. It rang once. You actually called. A woman's voice, tight, like something wound past the point meant for it. I didn't think you would call. Who are you? Naomi said. My name is Priya. I was his wife before you. A pause that had the weight of a whole collapsed life sitting on top of it. He took everything. My savings, my inheritance, my mother's life insurance. All of it was gone inside 7 months. I spent a year trying to prove what he did. Her voice cracked at its center seam and then held, like something that had broken before and learned to hold at the break. I couldn't. There was nothing left to recover. One more pause. There are 3 of us. 3 women he's done this to. We found each other 8 months ago, and we have been watching him every single day since then. The cold tap ran, Naomi said. What does the man I'm having lunch with have to do with any of this? The silence on the other end lasted long enough to be its own answer. Cavil Park, Priya said slowly, is not a philanthropist. Naomi's reflection in the restroom mirror did not move. The cold tap ran. The restaurant on the other side of the door went on murmuring its expensive murmur. She had given herself 2 minutes. She had maybe 90 seconds left. Tell me, she said. Priya's voice dropped lower, the way voices go when the information inside them is large enough to require less air. Cavil Park runs the most powerful Korean organized crime network in the Midwest. He controls 6 counties of financial infrastructure, shell companies, laundering operations, investment vehicles that look completely clean from the outside. A breath. Marcus worked inside that network for 3 years. He was a fixer. He identified targets, built relationships, made problems disappear. He was very good at it. A pause with something bitter in it. Too good. 18 months ago, Marcus stole from Cavil directly. A routing operation Marcus was managing. He skimmed $4.3 million before anyone understood what was happening, and then he disappeared. Her voice went flat. Into a new name, a new city, a new wife. The mirror gave Naomi back her own face. She studied it the way she studied everything she needed to understand, steadily, without flinching. And Cavil arranged this lunch, Naomi said. He has been looking for Marcus for 14 months. He found you first. Another pause. The foundation story is real enough that it would hold up to a quick search. It was designed to give Marcus a reason to put you in that room. Cavil needed someone Marcus trusted, someone Marcus would never suspect he was using as a bridge. Priya's voice tightened again. You walked into that restaurant as bait, Naomi. Marcus needs Cavil to think he's ready to settle the debt. The meeting was supposed to be a peace signal. You were the symbol of good faith. She exhaled. The problem is, Cavil Park does not do peace signals. He does conclusions. The cold tap ran. 70 seconds, maybe less. How do you know all of this? Naomi said. Because the fourth woman Marcus married after me, her name was Song. She was connected to Cavill's organization by blood, his cousin's daughter. Priya's voice went very quiet. She didn't survive what Marcus did to her. Not financially, not emotionally, not any way that counted. When she died, Cavill Park made Marcus his singular focus. We reached out to him 6 months ago because we had information he needed, and he had resources we didn't. A pause. He is not a good man, Naomi. But he wants Marcus the same way we want Marcus. And right now, you are sitting across the table from him with no idea what you walked into. Naomi turned off the cold tap. She pressed a single fold of paper towel against each palm. She straightened the collar of her blazer. She looked at herself one more time. Not for comfort, not for courage, just for information. The face of a woman deciding something. "What does he want from me?" she said. "He'll tell you himself," Priya said. "He arranged this lunch for a reason. Stay calm. Don't let him see you know. And whatever you do," her voice dropped to almost nothing, "don't lie to him. He will know. And a man like Cavill Park does not forgive the people who lie to his face." The call went dead. Naomi stood in the restroom of an upscale Chicago restaurant in a burgundy blazer her husband had complimented that morning, and for exactly 4 seconds she allowed herself to feel the full size of what had just happened. The $7.2 million in the accounts, the documents she had signed 8 months ago that Marcus had called portfolio adjustments, the 14 months of a marriage she had built on top of the grief of losing her parents, believing she was finally building something again. 4 seconds. Then she put it somewhere it would not move until she needed it. She walked back to the table. Cavill was exactly as she had left him. Notes open, coffee untouched, dark eyes coming up from the page to her face with that same quality of attention that had nothing casual in it. She took her seat. She reached for her water. She looked at him directly. "My apologies," she said. "Where were we?" He watched her for a moment that lasted slightly longer than a moment. "Phase 3 infrastructure," he said. "But we can come back to it." He closed the folder, rested both hands flat on the table. "I want to ask you something different." Her pulse moved but did not spike. "Go ahead." "How much do you know about your husband's professional history? Before the two of you met?" The question entered the space between them and sat there, clear and undecorated, the way Cavill Park apparently delivered everything. She had 4 possible responses. She chose the one closest to the truth. "I know what he told me," she said. Something shifted in Cavill's face. Not softening, not hardening. An adjustment. The look of a man recalculating a variable that had just changed its value. He studied her for 3 more seconds. Then he reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and placed a small white card on the table between them. No logo, no title, just a number. "Finish your water," he said. He stood, buttoning his jacket in one smooth motion. "Leave the restaurant separately. Take a different car than the one your husband's account paid for." He picked up his own phone from the table. "Call that number tonight. Before 9. He looked at her one final time, and what was in his eyes in that moment was not a threat and was not warmth. It was something that sat directly between them. Like information she hadn't learned how to read yet. "I'm sorry about your parents, Ms. Wells." He was gone before she could ask him how he knew about her parents. The car Marcus had arranged was a black sedan waiting at the restaurant's east entrance, a driver whose name she didn't know, and whose company she could feel on the back of her neck the entire 40-minute ride back to the house in Lincoln Park. She sat in the middle of the back seat and watched the city pass, and kept her phone face down in her lap and did not call Marcus. He would expect her to call. She always called after a big meeting, before she was even back in the car, voice lit up, telling him how it went. She had done it after every important appointment for 14 months because that was the rhythm they had built. And Marcus thrived on rhythm.
He counted on her patterns. She thought about that word, counted. The house was empty when she arrived. Marcus had texted her at noon. Client dinner tonight, won't be home until 9, so proud of you for that meeting. Can't wait to hear everything. She had read it in the restaurant bathroom with Priya's voice still in her ear. And felt the particular nausea of seeing something familiar rearrange itself into something you can't unfamiliar. She went to the kitchen first, put water on. Stood at the counter with both palms flat against the cold stone and breathed through her nose. Once, twice, 3 times. The same pattern she used before walking into a crisis room at the hospital, where someone needed her to be the steadiest thing present. Then she went to his office. She had been in Marcus's home office dozens of times.
It had never felt like a private space. He left the door open, he worked with music on, he had called her in to look at things on his screen, laughed with her over his desk. It was designed to feel unguarded. She understood now that this, too, was intentional. The filing cabinet was locked. She had known that without registering it, the way you know dozens of small things about a home without recording them as significant. She found the key in 11 minutes, taped to the underside of the second desk drawer, which was either careless or the choice of a man who believed his wife would never look. The files inside were labeled cleanly: tax years, property, insurance, medical. She flipped through them with the careful speed of someone who knew what documents looked like and how they were structured. And then, near the back of the bottom drawer, behind a hanging folder labeled MISC, she found a smaller folder with no label at all. Inside it were 3 photographs. The first, a woman she didn't recognize, late 20s, standing outside what looked like a Boston apartment building. The photo had a date stamp in the corner, 31 months ago. The second, a different woman, early 30s, smiling at a restaurant. The date stamp, 22 months ago. The third photograph stopped her hand. It was her, standing outside the hospital where she worked. She was in her work badge and winter coat, head slightly turned, not looking at the camera. The date stamp in the corner read, 11 days before she and Marcus met. The kettle in the kitchen began to scream. She stood in Marcus's office with the photograph of herself in her own hands and let that fact become real all the way through. He had photographed her before the charity dinner where they had supposedly met by chance. He had been watching her before he introduced himself. The meeting that had felt like serendipity, the conversation that had felt like fate. The man who had seemed like the universe deciding her grief had lasted long enough. All of it had been a stage that was built before she ever walked onto it. She put the photographs back in exact order. She relocked the cabinet. She put the key back under the drawer. She went to the kitchen, poured the water, made the tea. She sat at the kitchen table they had chosen together at a Saturday market 8 months ago, and she held the mug with both hands, and she let herself feel it fully, all of it, not managed, not minimized, for precisely as long as she needed to. Then she picked up Cavil Park's white card and stared at the number. Call that number tonight, before 9. A man who ran organized crime across 6 counties had sat across from her at lunch and spoken calmly about healthcare infrastructure while knowing exactly who had arranged the meeting and why. He had let her leave the table to receive the information that would detonate her marriage. He had waited for her to return. He had asked one question and watched her answer it, and then given her his number and told her to call before 9. She thought about what Priya had said. He is not a good man, but he wants Marcus the same way we want Marcus. She thought about the photograph of herself standing outside the hospital, 11 days before they met. She thought about $7.2 million in accounts that held everything her parents had left her when the house fire took them on an ordinary Wednesday in an ordinary November, and whether any of it was still there in the configuration she believed it to be. She set down the mug. She picked up her phone. She dialed the number on the card. It rang twice. "You found something?" Cavill's voice. No greeting, no preamble. "Photographs," she said. "He had photographs of me before we met. Dated." She kept her voice even. "There were 2 other women. Different photographs. Dated earlier." A pause of exactly 2 seconds. "There are 5 women total," Cavill said. "3 of us have been in contact with each other for the last 8 months. I have been building a case with 2 of them and a financial forensics investigator since February." A pause. "What I am missing is someone on the inside. Someone he trusts completely. Someone whose cooperation he would never suspect." He let that land. "He thinks today's meeting went exactly as he planned it. He believes you walked out of that restaurant knowing nothing." "He would believe that," Naomi said carefully, "because I walked out of that restaurant giving him no reason to think otherwise." A silence, shorter than the last one. "Ms. Wells." His voice had changed in a way she couldn't fully name. Something had moved in it, something that was neither warmer nor colder, but was more present than it had been. "What happened to you is not nothing. I want to be direct with you about what I'm asking and what I am not." A pause. "What I am asking will require you to go back into that house tonight and function as his wife for a period of time that I cannot yet specify. It will require control under conditions that will become more difficult." His voice stayed level. "I can promise you that at the end of it, he will never do this to anyone else. I cannot promise you the process will not cost you something." "Something has already cost me something," Naomi said. The city outside the kitchen window had moved into its early evening, the sky going gray-blue over the rooftops, the streetlights coming on, one by one, down the block, like something being decided. "He has a meeting Monday morning," Cavill said, "with a financial manager he uses to execute transfers. If you can get me the location before Sunday night—" He stopped. Started again differently. "I know this is not the night you expected to have." "No," Naomi said, "it isn't." She looked at her parents' photograph on the kitchen wall. The one from their 30th anniversary, the one she had hung in every place she'd lived since they died. "But I know what my parents left me that money for, and it wasn't for him." Another silence, different from the others. "Sunday night," Cavill said. "Before 10. He ended the call. Naomi sat alone in the kitchen of the house she shared with a man she did not know, and she put her mother's face together from memory. The laugh lines, the reading glasses, the hands that had always smelled like the same lotion. And she held it there until it steadied her. Then she started planning. Marcus came home at 9:14. Naomi heard his key in the lock from the living room couch where she was reading, or appearing to read, the book open in her lap at the same page it had been on for 2 hours, her eyes moving across the lines without collecting a single word. She had rehearsed the evening, not in a theatrical way, the way she rehearsed difficult conversations before crisis interventions at the hospital, knowing the landscape, knowing where the exits were, knowing what the other person needed to see in order to keep moving in the direction you needed them to move. She needed Marcus to see a woman who had a good meeting, came home, made tea, read a book, and was waiting for him the way she always waited for him. "Hey." He appeared in the living room doorway, jacket over his arm, loosened tie, the specific version of tired that looked like a man who worked hard and cared about it. He was very good at tired. She understood now that he practiced all of it. How was he? Was it everything I said it would be? Smart man. She closed the book and let a smaller, genuine smile come through, because the truest camouflage is always built around something real. I wasn't expecting him to be that strategic. He's not performing intelligence, he actually has it. Marcus's face lit up with the warm, particular pride of a man whose recommendation had landed correctly, and she watched him do it, watched the ease of it, the fullness of it, and filed the image somewhere cold. He crossed the room, kissed the top of her head, moved toward the kitchen. I knew you two would connect. You think about systems the same way. The refrigerator opened. Did he talk funding structures at all? Timelines? He left the details for a follow-up. She turned a page she hadn't read. He wants to meet again next week. Good. A pause. The refrigerator closed. That's good, Naomi. She noted the texture of his satisfaction. It was not the satisfaction of a husband glad his wife had a professional win. It was something that sat underneath that. Denser, more specific. The satisfaction of something clicking into position. She turned another page. Upstairs, later, she lay beside him in the dark while his breathing slowed and leveled out, and she stared at the ceiling and ran through everything Priya had told her about the Monday meeting. The financial manager, the transfer sequence, the 4-hour window in which $7.2 million could be redistributed across accounts she did not know existed and would spend years trying to trace. She had 4 days. 4 days to find the location of a meeting Marcus had not mentioned to her and would not mention to her, because the version of their marriage he was operating inside had no room in it for that level of honesty. She needed the location before Sunday night. She turned her head and looked at the side of Marcus's sleeping face in the dark. He looked like a man she had loved. She looked at him for a long time. Not with grief, and not with rage. With the precise, focused attention of someone studying a problem that required a solution before Monday morning. She picked up her phone from the nightstand, opened her notes app, and began writing down everything she remembered about the last 6 weeks of his behavior. Every unexplained late evening, every document she had signed that he had prepared, every phone call he had taken in another room. The patterns were there. She could see them now, the way you see a shape in a picture the moment someone shows you where to look. She had not been oblivious. She had been trusting. There is a difference, and the difference matters, because one of them is a flaw, and the other is a wound that was deliberately made. Her phone vibrated. A message from a number she now had saved under a single initial. P. He uses a woman named Reese Monroe as his advanced scout. She identifies targets. She makes introductions. She was the one who told him about you. Naomi read the message twice. Then she read it a third time. And this time the name landed differently, the way a familiar word lands when you suddenly see what it means. Reese Monroe. Her best friend since the 3rd year of college. The woman who had introduced her to Marcus at a rooftop charity dinner 18 months ago. Laughing and easy, saying, "Naomi, you have to meet this man. I've been trying to get you two in the same room for weeks." The woman who had called her every week since her parents died, who had shown up to the hospital at 2 in the morning when the fire happened, and had not left until the sun came up, who knew the precise size of the inheritance, who knew the accounts, who knew the shape of Naomi's loneliness better than anyone alive, who had handed her, gift-wrapped, to the man currently sleeping beside her. Naomi set the phone face down on her chest. She looked at the ceiling. She breathed once, twice, 3 times. The thing she felt was not anger. It was something quieter and more total than anger. The specific silence of a floor that has given way, and the falling that comes after it. In the split second before you understand how far down you are going to go. She waited until it finished moving through her. Then she picked up the phone and typed back to Priya. How long has she been working with him? The reply came fast, like Priya had been waiting beside the phone. At least 4 years. She introduced him to 2 women before you.
She gets a percentage. 4 years. Naomi and Reese had been friends for 11. 7 years of that friendship had been real. 4 years of it had been a long approach to a single transaction. She lay still in the dark for a long time. Then she typed one more thing to Priya, I need to know where his Monday meeting is. How do I find it? Priya's answer came in 3 seconds flat, ask Reese. She called Reese the next morning from the driveway, sitting in her car with the engine running, while Marcus was upstairs in the shower. Normal enough reason to call. They spoke almost every day. This was Saturday. They sometimes had coffee on Saturdays. Can you meet me? Naomi kept her voice in its familiar register, warm, easy, the voice of a woman calling her best friend. I need to talk through some things about the foundation meeting. I want your read on Cavill Park. A pause on the other end. Brief, the kind that would only mean something if you were already looking for it. Of course. The usual place? 10 o'clock? Perfect, Naomi said. I'll be there. She sat in the car for 30 seconds after the call ended. The morning was pale and ordinary, the Lincoln Park street damp from overnight rain, a neighbor walking a dog at the far end of the block. She thought about 11 years. She thought about a hospital corridor at 2 in the morning and a woman who had not left until sunrise. She thought about what a person must have to be, what specific quality of hollowness. To do something like that alongside something like this. Then she put the car in reverse and backed out. The cafe was 3 blocks from both of them, the kind of neighborhood staple with good light and enough background noise that a conversation could be private without looking like it was trying to be. Reese was already there when Naomi arrived, at their usual table, 2 coffees waiting, wearing a camel coat and an easy open smile. Naomi sat down.
She looked at Reese's face, the face of a woman who had held her hand at 2 funerals, who had read a eulogy at her father's service because Naomi's voice had not been available that morning. The face of a woman who had used every single piece of that access like a key to a room that was never meant for her. Tell me everything, Reese said, leaning in. Was he as intense as everyone says? He was, Naomi said. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. Very focused, very specific about what he was looking for. A pause. He asked about Marcus, actually, toward the end. Asked how much I knew about his professional history. Something moved behind Reese's eyes. A slight recalibration. Small enough that if Naomi hadn't been watching for it, she would have missed it completely. That's strange, Reese said carefully. Why would he ask you that? I'm not sure. Naomi held her gaze. Do you know anything about Marcus's history with Park? Did Marcus ever mention him? No. Clean and fast. Too clean, maybe. The specific cleanliness of a prepared surface. I mean, I know Marcus has run in some high-level financial circles, but I wouldn't know anything about a connection. Naomi nodded slowly, as if this satisfied her, and then looked at her coffee, and then looked back up. Reese, the Monday meeting Marcus has, the investment manager thing, do you know where it is? A beat. How would I know that? Reese asked. He mentioned you had lunch with him on Thursday, Naomi said, which was a complete invention, delivered without a single variance in her voice. Said you ran into each other downtown. I figured maybe it came up. The calculation behind Reese's eyes was fast and sophisticated, but not fast enough. She was deciding whether Marcus had actually told Naomi about Thursday, and deciding that if Marcus had told her, there was no advantage in denying it, and deciding that a small offer of real information would feel more like loyalty than like feeding coordinates to a woman who was being robbed. "The Meridian Club," Reese said, her voice resettling into casual. "On Wacker. I think it's at 10 o'clock. "The Meridian Club," Naomi repeated, as if this were only mildly interesting. "I keep meaning to go there. Is it nice?" "Very." Reese wrapped her hands around her own cup and smiled. "Marcus has good taste." "He does," Naomi said. She stayed 20 more minutes. She let Reese steer the conversation to other things. A movie she'd seen, someone from college who had just gotten married, a complaint about her building's management. Naomi listened. She laughed at the right moments. She asked a follow-up question and let the answer run long. When she left, she hugged Reese at the door. She pressed both arms around her and held it 1 full second longer than usual. It was not affection. It was grief. A specific, purposeful grief. The kind you give something before you set it down for the last time, so that the setting down is clean. She was 1 block away when she texted Cavill. "Meridian Club. Wacker. Monday. 10 o'clock. His reply came in under 40 seconds. "Good. Don't contact Reese again." Then, a second message. "Does Marcus know you called her?" Naomi considered. "No. Keep it that way. He will check her phone by Sunday night." She stopped walking. She stood on the sidewalk on a Saturday morning, with people moving past her in both directions, the city going about its ordinary business all around her. And she understood what the message meant. Marcus and Reese were in regular enough contact that he knew to check her phone before a major operation, which meant their communication was tactical, not casual. Which meant Reese had not stumbled into this by chance or manipulation, but had chosen it, maintained it, and was continuing it. 4 years. She had made this choice 4 years ago, and had kept making it every single time she sat across from Naomi in this cafe. Naomi started walking again. There were things she could feel later. This was not later. This was Saturday morning with 44 hours left before Monday 10 o'clock, and feeling things was not what the next 44 hours required. She called Priya. "Meridian Club on Wacker," she said when Priya picked up. "Monday, 10 a.m. I got it from Reese directly." A silence on the other end. And then Priya said something Naomi had not expected. Said it in a voice that had gone to a completely different texture. "How did you get her to tell you?" "I asked her," Naomi said simply. Another silence. Longer. "You know, when I found out about her, it broke something I didn't know I still had. The idea that she just..." Priya stopped. "I never met her. But one of the other women, she was close to Reese too. When she found out, she couldn't get out of bed for 3 weeks." Naomi walked. The city moved around her. "I understand that," she said. "I do." She kept her voice even. "But I need to stay out of bed for 44 more hours. Then I'll deal with what it means." Priya exhaled, slow and long, like something she had been holding since before this conversation. "Yeah," she said quietly. "Yeah. Okay." "Tell me what happens Monday," Naomi said. "Walk me through what Cavill needs from me. All of it. I don't want any part of this to surprise me." Sunday came in gray and close. clouds low over the city, and a cold that had teeth in it. And Naomi moved through the house with the practiced ease of a woman who had nothing on her mind except a quiet weekend. She made breakfast. She asked Marcus about a restaurant he'd mentioned. She sat beside him on the couch for an hour and a half and watched a documentary about deep-sea ecosystems, which she had chosen deliberately because it was long and immersive and gave them 90 minutes of parallel silence that looked like domestic comfort and required almost no performance. Marcus was relaxed. This was the tell she had been watching for since Friday night, the specific relaxation of a man whose plan was on schedule. He was not nervous. He was not watchful. He was the version of himself he became when all the pieces were in place, and the only remaining variable was time. She found this more frightening than if he had been anxious. At 2 p.m, he went upstairs to take a call. She heard the office door close. She waited 45 seconds, then moved to the kitchen, stood at the sink with the tap running, and texted Cavill. "He's on the call now. Same pattern as last Sunday." The reply was immediate. "We are positioned. Tomorrow needs one more thing from you." She kept her eyes on the window above the sink. The backyard was gray and still, the bare tree at the far fence moving slightly in the wind. What thing? "After his 10 o'clock meeting begins, we need 15 minutes. We need you to keep him from checking his secondary phone. If he checks it before 11:15, the window closes." She read that 3 times. How do I keep him from checking it? A pause longer than Cavill's usual pauses. Then, "You're going to call him at 10:05. Tell him there's a problem with the Meridian account. A flag on a joint asset. Tell him your bank called this morning and you've been trying to reach him." Another line. "He will leave the meeting to deal with it. We need him in the lobby, not the room." Naomi stared at the running tap. The plan had a logic to it that she could follow cleanly. Marcus in the lobby, the room with his financial manager now accessible, whatever documentation Cavill's people needed now within reach without Marcus present to contain the narrative. The plan would work. She could see exactly how it would work. She could also see what it required her to do, which was stand inside her own marriage with a phone in her hand and pull the structural pin out of the floor while Marcus was standing on it. "Understood," she typed. "There is one more thing." She waited. "He will know by Monday evening. We cannot control the timing of that. You need to not be in the house when he finds out." A pause. "I will send someone for you at noon." She turned off the tap. She stood very still. Upstairs, the office door opened. Marcus's footsteps crossed the landing. She heard him pause at the top of the stairs and then start down. She turned from the sink and picked up a dish towel and was drying her hands when he appeared in the kitchen doorway, phone in his jacket pocket, the call completed, his face wearing the settled, satisfied expression she now read with completely different eyes. "You want to go out tonight?" He leaned in the doorway. "That Italian place on Halsted. I feel like celebrating." "Celebrating what?" she asked. He smiled, wide and warm and entirely made. "Us," he said. "I don't need more reason than that." She looked at him across the kitchen in their house with the tree moving in the gray yard behind her, and the photograph of her parents on the wall, and the full knowledge of what was coming in less than 21 hours. And she said, "Let me go change." She went upstairs. She sat on the edge of the bed. She pressed both hands flat against her thighs and breathed through it, the full weight of it, all at once. Everything she had managed one piece at a time since Thursday suddenly present together. Priya's voice in the restaurant bathroom. Priya's second wife. Song, who did not survive. The photograph of herself outside the hospital. Reese's face over a coffee cup. 7.2 million. Her parents' money. Her parents. She breathed through it until it was something she could carry, rather than something that was carrying her. Then she stood up. She found a dress. She did her earrings in the mirror. She went back downstairs. At the restaurant, she let Marcus pour her wine. She asked about his week. She laughed at the story he told about a colleague. She ordered the pasta she always ordered and ate half of it and let him have some from her plate, because they had always done that, had always had that specific, easy intimacy of two people who had built a life around each other's appetites. At one point, he reached across the table and put his hand over hers and looked at her with something she could no longer name accurately and said, "You know how lucky I am? That you exist?" She turned her hand over under his. She held his gaze. She did not look away. "I think about that too," she said. It was not entirely a lie. She had thought about luck. About the luck of a woman who had survived the worst grief of her life, and then walked directly into the arms of someone who had been waiting on the other side of it with a plan. About how luck can look like luck right up until the moment it looks like something else entirely. She kept his hand in hers until the check came. She did not sleep that night. She lay beside him in the dark and rehearsed Monday's sequence until it was clean in her mind. 10 o'clock, 10:05. The call, the lobby. 11:15, noon. She ran it forward and backward and checked it for gaps the way she checked discharge plans at the hospital, looking for the place where the handoff fails, where the information doesn't transfer, where the patient ends up back at the door because nobody thought about Thursday. There were no gaps. The plan was clean. At 3:17 in the morning, Marcus's secondary phone buzzed on the nightstand on his side. He didn't stir. She lay very still and watched the glow pulse twice against the dark wood and then go quiet. She thought about Cavill's voice on the phone. He is not a good man. But he wants Marcus the same way we want Marcus. She thought about 5 women. She thought about song. She closed her eyes. She was ready. Monday arrived the way catastrophes sometimes do. Quietly, with good light. The sky had cleared overnight, and the morning came in sharp and cold and blue. The kind of Chicago morning that looks like a promise from a distance and cuts you the moment you step into it. Naomi was dressed before Marcus came out of the bathroom. Navy wrap dress, low heels, the small gold earrings she wore when she needed to feel composed rather than decorated. She had her bag ready. She had eaten half a piece of toast standing at the kitchen counter and drunk a full glass of water and taken 2 deliberate breaths before Marcus appeared at the bottom of the stairs in his best charcoal suit, the one he saved for meetings that mattered. She noticed the suit. She said nothing about it. "You're up early," he said. He moved to the coffee maker. Unhurried. Easy. Couldn't sleep. This was true. She offered it freely because the truest part of any cover is the part that costs you nothing to give away. Kept thinking about the follow-up with Park, whether I framed the funding model correctly. Marcus poured his coffee and smiled at her over the rim. "You always do this before a big opportunity. You analyze until you can't sleep, and then you walk in and nail it." He set the cup down and crossed the kitchen and kissed her forehead. Deliberate. Familiar. The gesture of a man who had performed this particular tenderness so many times it had become indistinguishable from real. "You're going to be fine." "I know," she said. He left at 9:22. She watched his car pull out from the front window, one hand on the curtain. And then she moved. She had already packed 2 days of essentials into a bag she had placed the night before in the trunk of her own car while Marcus slept. Documents, the photographs she had copied, her parents' anniversary picture taken down from the wall and wrapped in a sweater. The house would be available to him until it wasn't. She was not going to be in it when that moment came. She texted Cavill at 9:31. He left, on schedule. The reply came in 11 seconds. "We're in position." Call him at 10:05 exactly. Not before. She sat in her car in the driveway. The street was quiet. A mail truck moved slowly at the far end of the block. She thought about Priya and the two other women. Their names were Claudette and Song was gone, and Claudette lived in Phoenix now and had rebuilt enough to be standing, but not enough to stop shaking when Marcus's name came up, which Priya had told her on the phone Saturday night, in a voice that made the information feel like a stone placed in Naomi's hand, rather than information being delivered. She thought about the weight of 5 separate lives, and what it meant that she was the 6th and the last. She was going to be the last. At 9:58, she drove out of Lincoln Park. At 10:03, she parked 2 blocks from the Meridian Club on Wacker and sat with the engine idling and her phone in her hand, the contact pulled up, the call not yet made. Through the windshield, the city moved. Taxis, pedestrians, a delivery truck pulling away from the curb, 2 women with coffee cups walking fast against the cold. All of it ordinary. All of it completely unaware. 10:05. She called. It rang 3 times. She counted. On the 4th ring, he answered, his voice at the specific, lowered register of a man in a room where he is choosing not to be overheard. Naomi. A note of contained impatience. Careful, but there. Marcus? She put a controlled urgency into her voice. Not panic, because Naomi Wells did not panic, and Marcus knew that, and a panic would read as performance. She gave him focused alarm instead, the voice of a competent woman who has encountered something requiring immediate management. I am sorry to call right now. I know your timing. The bank flagged something on the Whitmore joint account this morning. An asset verification hold. They've been trying to reach you since 9, and I've been trying your cell, and it kept going to voicemail. A silence. Brief. She could hear him calculating. Whether it was real, whether it was connected, whether it could wait 4 hours. What kind of hold? He said. They said it's a cross-account verification flag. Something about the transfer authorization structure not matching the signature profile on record. She let a thread of genuine stress into it, because she had spent 3 days thinking about her parents' money, and the stress was entirely available. They said if it isn't cleared in the next 2 hours, it escalates to a compliance review. Another silence. Longer this time. I'm in the middle of something, he said. I know, and I'm sorry. But this is the Whitmore account, Marcus. This is the account my parents... She stopped. Let the stop do its work. Let him hear the specific weight of what account it was. I can't have it go to compliance review. I need you to call them. She heard him exhale, heard the shift of his chair, heard the low sound of a door. Give me 5 minutes, he said. I'll step out and call. Thank you. She kept the relief measured. Real, but measured. She ended the call. She texted Cavill 1 word. Lobby. The response came in 4 seconds. Moving. She sat with the phone in both hands and the engine idling, and watched the front entrance of the Meridian Club through the windshield from 2 blocks back. A man in a black coat came through the revolving door at 10:09. She was too far to see his face clearly, but the build and the movement were right. Cavill Park, unhurried and precise, moving through a Monday morning in a city that did not know what he was walking into. She watched the door. She breathed. Her phone rang. Marcus. She let it ring twice before she answered. I called, he said. His voice had changed. Something in it was different. Not wrong yet, but tighter. the specific tightness of a man who has just called a number and received a response that didn't match the problem he was given. They said there's no flag on the account, no hold, no compliance issue. One beat of absolute stillness inside her chest. She had planned for this. She had planned for exactly this. Because Cavill had told her on Saturday night, quietly and without drama, that Marcus might call the bank, and that if he did, the conversation needed to extend him rather than resolve him, and that the way to extend a man who has just found a discrepancy is not to apologize, but to escalate. "That can't be right," she said. "The woman I spoke to gave me her name, Linda Marsh. She gave me a reference number." She let a thread of indignation enter her voice, thin and real. The voice of a woman who does not appreciate being made to feel foolish. "Marcus, I have the reference number right here. Are you sure they checked the right account?" A pause. "What's the number?" She gave him a string of digits she had memorized from a real Whitmore account statement. Not invented, real. Enough to require him to relay it, enough to require the person on the other end to look for it, enough to take 3 more minutes. "Hold on," he said. She watched the front entrance of the Meridian Club. Nobody came out. Nobody went in. 11 minutes. Stay in the lobby, she thought. 2 more minutes. Stay in the lobby. "They still don't see it," Marcus said. His voice was different now. Noticeably different. Something had sharpened behind it. Something that she was hearing for the first time because for 14 months, she had never been on the wrong side of his attention. "Naomi, where are you right now?" "I'm in the car," she said. "Parked. I've been trying to sort this out for an hour. Why?" "I need to go back in," he said. "I'll look at this when I'm home tonight." "Of course, I'm sorry I pulled you out." He had already ended the call. She texted Cavill. "He's going back in. Do you have it?" 14 seconds passed. 15. 16. Then, "We have it." She put both hands flat on the steering wheel. She pressed her head back against the headrest. She closed her eyes for exactly 3 seconds. Then she put the car in drive. She drove south on Wacker without a destination. Because she needed to move. And she needed to think. And those 2 things worked better together in a car than they did standing still anywhere in a city that now felt like it had been rebuilt around her without her knowledge. Every familiar street, a backdrop for a version of her life that had been a stage set from the beginning. Cavill called at 10:47. "It's done," he said. No preamble. No performance of relief. The words of a man reporting a completed action, not celebrating one. "His financial manager has been separated from the operation. The documentation is with my forensics team and with an independent federal contact simultaneously." A pause of exactly 1 beat. "He cannot complete the transfer. The accounts have been flagged through channels he does not have access to. By the time he understands what has happened, there will be nothing left to reverse." Naomi drove. "My accounts?" "Protected. All of them. Including the 3 he had partially repositioned. They are back in your name with a legal hold that will survive any challenge he files." She exhaled slowly. $7.2 million. Her parents' house sale. Her father's business insurance. Her mother's investment accounts that her mother had built over 30 years of careful, patient work. Back. Intact. The financial manager, she said. Is he talking? He is talking very quickly, Cavil said, with something in his voice that was not quite dry humor, but lived in that neighborhood. He has been talking since 10:20. He has given us names, dates, routing structures for all 5 operations. A pause. It is enough to build a federal case that Marcus will not walk away from. She changed lanes. The city moved past her windows. What happens now? Now you don't go home. I'm not going home. Good. A pause. My associate will meet you at the address I'm texting you now. She will take you somewhere clean while we finish the next phase. Another pause. Shorter. Different. Naomi, the federal contact I mentioned, he will need a direct statement from you. Your account of the marriage, the documents you found, the photographs, the conversation with his financial manager, that Marcus referenced in your presence without realizing what he was disclosing. His voice had moved to something more careful. This is the part where you have to decide how far you want to take it. She knew what he was asking, whether she was willing to put her name on the full account of what had happened to her and let it become public record, because that was what federal testimony meant. Not a private reckoning, not a clean conclusion that no one outside their 2 lives would ever see, but a public document, a trial. Her grief and her trust and her loss on record for anyone to read. She thought about Claudette in Phoenix, shaking when Marcus's name came up. She thought about Song, who had not survived the understanding. She thought about 2 women in photographs she had found in a locked filing cabinet, whose names she still didn't know. Tell me where to meet your associate, she said. The address came through as she was speaking. She turned east. The associate was a woman named Jin, who met her in the lobby of a hotel in the West Loop. Small and precise with close-cropped hair and a manner that was entirely businesslike and entirely without judgment. The manner of someone who had done this kind of meeting before and understood what it required. She took Naomi to a room on the 8th floor. There was coffee. There was a legal pad on the desk. There was a window with a view of a rooftop across the street, and beyond it, the gray-blue width of the city. Naomi sat down. She put her bag on the floor beside the chair. She accepted the coffee. Then her phone rang. Marcus. She stared at the screen for 2 rings. Jin, standing near the window, glanced at her once. Said nothing. Left the decision entirely in Naomi's hands. She answered. Where are you? Not a question. His voice was completely different from every version of it she had heard for 14 months. The warmth was gone. Not underneath something else. Not buried. Simply absent. The way furniture is absent from a room you have just realized was always empty. What was left was precise and cold and entirely focused. Naomi, I need you to tell me where you are right now. I'm out, she said. She kept her voice level. Running errands. Stop lying to me. Fast. Clipped. Your car has a GPS tracker since last spring. I can see exactly where you are. I can see that you've been driving in circles for 40 minutes. I can see that you are currently parked at an address that has nothing to do with errands. A pause. What did you do? She had known the tracker was possible. Cavil had warned her. She had driven accordingly, not to evade the tracker, but to give it nothing useful. Nothing that pointed to the hotel. Nothing that mapped a route from her car to Jin's lobby meeting. She had parked 3 blocks away and walked. Marcus, she said, slowly, deliberately. The way you speak to someone you are removing your protection from. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. I know about Song Yuta. I know about Priya. I know about Claudette. I know about the other two women whose names I still don't have, but whose photographs were in your locked filing cabinet. She let each name land separately, with its own weight. I know about the Monday meeting. I know about the accounts.
I know about Reese.
The silence on the other end was the particular silence of a structure failing. Not explosive, just the sound of something enormous going very still before it moves. You need to be very careful, he said finally. The voice of a man switching registers, no longer a husband, something else, something that had always been there under the husband, now standing in the open without its cover. You are not in a position to. I'm in exactly the position I'm in, Naomi said, which is the only one that matters. She paused. Don't call this number again. She ended the call. She placed the phone face down on the desk beside the legal pad. She looked at Jin. How do we start the statement? From the beginning, Jin said. Take your time. Naomi picked up the pen. At 11:37, Marcus called Reese. Naomi knew this because Priya texted her 30 minutes later. He called her. She's not answering. She already knows. At 12:14, a federal agent whose name was Torres arrived at the hotel room with a recorder and a file folder and a manner that was direct and careful in equal measure. He shook her hand. He sat across from her. He explained what the statement would be used for, and what her rights were in the process, and what the timeline looked like from this point. She listened to all of it. She asked 2 clarifying questions. She answered everything he asked her from the beginning to the current morning, clearly and in order, without minimizing and without embellishment, the way she had been trained to give accounts in difficult situations, with the understanding that the truth, stated plainly, is always more than enough. It took 2 hours and 14 minutes. When they were finished, Torres closed his folder. He looked at her across the desk with an expression that was professional and also, briefly, something more human than professional. Ms. Wells, he said, this is the most complete account we've received across all 5 cases. This is what closes it. She nodded once. There's one more thing, Torres said. He opened the folder again, removed a single photograph, slid it across the table. This man was identified in 2 of Marcus's routing operations. We believe he facilitated the financial infrastructure Marcus used in the last 3 cases. He tapped the edge of the photograph. His name is Cavill Park. Naomi looked at the photograph. Cavill in a different suit, a different city. A grainy shot with a surveillance quality to it. She looked at it for a long moment. She thought about a voice on a bathroom floor. A marble floor in a restaurant restroom. 14 months of a marriage detonating in real time. And the only voice telling her the truth. She thought about Song Yuta. She looked up at Torres. What do you need to know? What she gave Torres was the truth, which was also a door she understood she was choosing to open. She told him about the phone call at the restaurant, about the file Cavill had shown her, the photographs, the bank statements, the 22 months of documentation built around a dead woman's name. She told him about Jean, about the hotel room, about the statement she had just spent 2 hours giving. She gave him the full account of what Cavill Park had built, and what he had asked her to do inside it, and what she had agreed to do. She did not tell him where the hotel was. Torres did not ask. She understood, in the particular way she had begun to understand the architecture of things that ran underneath the visible surface of other things, that some questions not asked were questions that had already been answered through different channels. When Torres left, she sat alone in the hotel room for a long time. She thought about what it meant that Cavill had known Marcus for 22 months and had spent those months building a case rather than simply making the kind of conclusion that a man with his particular set of resources could have made on the first day. She thought about what it meant that he had called her on the bathroom floor, instead of going through his network. She thought about Songyura again, not as a fact in a file, but as a person. Early 20s, a medical residency, a future that had been taken from her in the most personal and deliberate way a future could be taken. She thought about what it costs a man to watch that happen to someone he loved and channel the entire weight of it into 22 months of careful, documented, transferable evidence. She thought about what kind of man that was. Whether good and not good were the right categories for something that complicated. Her phone buzzed. Not a call. A text from an unknown number she had not seen before. "Are you safe?" She stared at it. Then she typed back, "Yes." Torres came. A pause. Then, "I know. I expected it. Are you all right?" The question was simple. She read it twice. There was something in the plainness of it. Not, "Is the operation intact?" or "Did you give him anything that compromises the network?" but simply, "Are you all right?" That she did not know what to do with. So she set it aside and answered it directly. "I don't know yet," she typed. "Ask me in a week." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. "Fair," he wrote. And then, after a pause, "You were more prepared than anyone I have ever put in that position. I want you to know that." She put the phone down. She stood up and went to the window and looked at the rooftops and the gray sky and the way the city kept existing in its entirety, regardless of what happened inside any one room of it, which had always been either a comfort or an insult, depending on the day. Then her phone rang. Priya. "He's been picked up," Priya said. Her voice was different than it had been in any of their previous calls, stripped of the tightness that had been in it since the first message in the restaurant bathroom, as if something structural had been removed, and what remained was just Priya herself, exhausted and real and present. Torres's team. 40 minutes ago, his financial manager is already in a deposition. A breath. Claudette called me 20 minutes ago. She was crying so hard I couldn't understand her for the first 2 minutes. She just kept saying, "It's over, it's over." Naomi pressed her forehead against the cool glass of the window. "The other 2 women," she said. "The ones from the photographs, have they been reached?" One of them was found through the financial records 2 months ago. Her name is Deanna. She's in Atlanta, she's been contacted. A pause. The 5th woman, Marcus's first, she's in her 60s. She lost her retirement savings. Everything she had. She doesn't know yet. Priya's voice went quiet. "Someone has to call her." "I'll call her," Naomi said. A silence. "Naomi, I'll call her," she said again. "Give me the number, I'll call her tonight." The silence on Priya's end had a particular quality to it. The quality of a person who has been holding a very heavy thing for a very long time. And has just felt someone else's hands come under it. When Priya spoke again, her voice had the rough softness of something that had been wound very tight and was finally, carefully, loosening. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I'll send it." After the call, Naomi stood at the window for a long time. She thought about her parents. About her father's way of explaining things, patient, circular, always bringing the explanation back around to what it meant for the person in front of him. About her mother's hands. About the fire. About the specific and terrible way that grief makes you available for the wrong things, because grief removes your ordinary defenses.
The daily friction that protects you from people who have spent years learning how to move through it. Marcus had known that. He had counted on it the way you count on weather.
He had photographed her 11 days before he introduced himself and calculated the exact approach, and had been right about almost all of it. Almost. Her phone buzzed one more time. This time it was a number she recognized. Reese. She looked at the name on the screen for 4 full rings. She answered. Naomi? Reese's voice was unrecognizable. Stripped of everything, the ease, the warmth, the particular music of someone who has always known how to be loved in a room. What was left was barely held together, a voice assembled from pieces that were no longer fitting at the seams. I need you to know that She stopped. I don't know what I can say. I know there is nothing I can. Don't, Naomi said quietly. Don't tell me what you can't say. Tell me why. A long silence. When Reese spoke again, it was at a different register entirely, lower and slower, with the particular awful honesty of someone who has run out of versions of the story that protect themselves. I was in debt, she said. 4 years ago. I was in so much debt I couldn't see the other side of it. Marcus offered me a way out. I told myself I would do it once, that I would find him someone who could afford it, someone who would land on their feet. Her voice broke at its center, cleanly, with an audible seam. I told myself you would be fine, that you had enough, that it wouldn't be like Song, Naomi said. Silence. I didn't know about Song until 8 months ago, Reese said. When I found out, I tried to walk away. He told me I couldn't. He had documentation of every introduction I'd made. He said if I walked away, every woman I'd ever introduced to him would know my name. A wet inhale. I know that is not an excuse. I am not trying to give you an excuse. I am telling you what happened because you asked, and because you deserve to know the truth, and because after 11 years of everything that has actually been real between us, you deserve. Reese. Naomi's voice was steady and quiet and final. I believe that you are sorry. I want you to understand that I believe it completely, and that it doesn't change what you did, and that I can't carry both of those things at the same time right now. A pause. Torres is going to call you. Answer it. Tell him everything you just told me. All of it. A silence so full it was almost solid. Okay, Reese said, barely voice at all. Just air shaped around the word. Okay, Naomi said. She ended the call. She sat on the edge of the hotel bed. She put both hands flat on her knees and looked at the wall opposite her, which was clean and white and entirely blank. And she let the grief come now. Not managed, not measured, not held at the length she had been holding it since Thursday lunch. She let it come fully, and it was enormous. The way a wave is enormous when you have been watching it from the shore. And she did not move away from it, or redirect it, or give it a more manageable shape. She let it come, and she let it pass. And she sat in what was on the other side of it. Then she asked Jin for a glass of water. She picked up her phone. She found the number Priya had sent. She called the woman in Atlanta named Deanna, who had lost her retirement to Marcus Aldrich 8 years ago, and had never been able to prove what he had done to her. And when Deanna answered with the guarded voice of a woman who had learned not to trust unexpected calls, Naomi said, My name is Naomi Wells. I need you to know that you were right. You were right about everything. And it's over. The sound that came from the other end of that line was not words. It was older than words. Naomi held the phone and let her hear it, the whole of it, without rushing toward comfort, the way she had learned to sit with people in the worst moments of their lives, giving them the full space of what they were feeling, rather than the smaller space of what someone else could manage. Outside, the city moved on in its entirely ordinary way. The sky above the rooftops had cleared while she wasn't watching. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in November, Naomi Wells sat across from a federal prosecutor named Vasquez in a glass-walled conference room on the 23rd floor of a building on South Dearborn and gave the final portion of her testimony, with the same steadiness she had brought to every portion before it. Clear, sequential, precise. The account of a woman who had understood from the beginning that the most powerful thing she could offer was not emotion, but accuracy. When it was done, Vasquez closed his folder and looked at her with the particular expression of someone who has processed a great deal of human damage in the course of their work and has not yet become entirely accustomed to it. "Ms. Wells," he said, "I want you to understand what this testimony means for the other 4 cases. Without your account, the earlier operations were circumstantially strong, but not structurally closed. With yours, every case from the first victim forward becomes prosecutable." He paused. "Every woman he did this to will see him held accountable. That is because of you." Naomi looked at the view through the glass wall. The city in its November grey, the lake a dark line at the far edge of everything, the ordinary Monday traffic moving below. She thought about a woman named Deanna in Atlanta, whom she had spoken to 4 more times since that first call, who had sent her a photograph last week of her daughter's college acceptance letter with a message that said only, "She did it. We're going to be okay." She thought about Claudette in Phoenix, who had started sleeping without medication for the first time in 2 years. She thought about Priya, who was currently in the process of reclaiming her mother's life insurance money through the restitution proceedings that Marcus's guilty plea had made possible. Because he had pleaded guilty 2 weeks ago on all 6 counts, because the documentation Cavill's forensics team had assembled alongside Naomi's federal testimony had left him no mathematical alternative. "Thank you," she said to Vasquez. She meant it simply, without addition. She took the elevator down alone. The lobby was marble and chrome, and full of people moving through their Tuesdays in the completely ordinary way of people who did not know what had just been concluded 23 floors above them. She pushed through the revolving door into the cold and stood on the sidewalk with her coat buttoned and her bag on her shoulder, and let the air move against her face. She had found a new apartment 2 weeks ago, smaller than the Lincoln Park house, higher up, with windows on 3 sides and a view she had stood at every morning and found, each time, genuinely worth standing at. She had taken from the house only what was hers before Marcus: her clothes, her parents' photograph, 2 boxes of books, the kitchen table she had bought with her own money in the first year she had lived alone. She had left everything else and had not experienced this as loss. She had experienced it as the specific lightness of a woman who has stopped carrying weight that was never hers to carry. She was standing on the sidewalk, deciding whether to walk north or hail a cab, when she heard her name. She turned. Cavill Park was standing 15 feet away on the same sidewalk, in the same black coat she had seen him in a dozen times now, hands in his pockets, the November wind doing nothing visible to him. He had the quality he always had of being entirely still in a way that was not stillness by accident, but by decision. A man who had learned very early that the world moved more usefully around him when he did not move to meet it. She had not seen him since the hotel. They had spoken 3 times by phone. Each call had been brief and functional. Updates on the federal timeline, a question about documentation she had referenced, a short exchange about the restitution structure. Each call had also contained, somewhere underneath the functional surface of it, something neither of them had addressed directly. The way you do not address the largest piece of furniture in a room when you are discussing where to put the lamp. She walked toward him. He did not move until she was close enough for ordinary conversation. And then he simply looked at her with those dark eyes that held longer than was comfortable, and said, "How did it go?" "It's done," she said. All of it. He nodded once, the nod of a man receiving information he had expected, and for whom the expectation offered no particular comfort. She had learned to read the texture of his pauses and his silences over the past 3 weeks, in the way you learn to read weather when you are living inside it, not as absence, but as content. Song would have been 30 today, he said. She had not known that. She looked at him. He was not looking at her. He was looking at some middle distance over her left shoulder, at the city or at nothing, his jaw set in the way it set when he was holding something that was too large for his usual containment. And she saw it then, just briefly, just for the span of a few seconds, the thing underneath the stillness. Not the Mafia boss, not the man who had run an operation across 6 counties and coordinated a federal evidence transfer and moved through the most dangerous rooms in the city without raising his pulse. Just a man who had loved his sister and had been too far away when she needed him, and had spent 22 months trying to build something out of that absence that might mean it had not been entirely without purpose. I know, he said quietly, as if she had spoken. There's nothing that makes it enough. No, she said. There isn't. They stood together on the sidewalk in the cold. The city moved around them in all its indifferent abundance. A cab went past. Someone's phone rang 2 feet away and was answered, and the conversation happened and ended while they stood there. And all of it was the ordinary texture of a Tuesday that had no idea what it was holding. I want to ask you something, Naomi said. He looked at her then, direct, waiting. The first night, in the restaurant bathroom, you could have sent anyone to make that call. An associate, someone from your network, someone without a personal stake in it. She held his gaze steadily. Why did you call me yourself? A pause, not the calculating kind, the kind where a man is deciding how much accuracy to offer. Because I knew what it would cost you to hear it, he said finally, and I did not want the person who told you to be someone who did not understand the size of that cost. He paused again. Song trusted people easily. It was one of the things I failed to protect in her. Something shifted in his face, precise and brief and entirely unguarded, the most unguarded she had ever seen him. I did not want to make the same mistake twice, of sending a smaller answer than the moment required. She looked at him for a long moment. You are not a good man, she said. You've told me that yourself. I've read the file Torres put together on your operation. I understand what you are and how you operate and what that means. He held her gaze and said nothing, which was its own kind of honesty. But you were the right person for this, she said. And I think you know the difference between what you are and what you chose this time. She paused. I think Song would know the difference too. The thing that moved across his face in that moment was not something she would have been able to name with any word she trusted, so she did not try to name it. She simply let it be what it was and gave it the space it required without rushing it toward conclusion. After a long moment, he said, What will you do now? Go back to work, she said immediately. Because this was true, and had been true since the first morning in the new apartment, when she had woken up in the clean air of a life that was entirely her own again, and understood that the work she had always done, sitting with people in the worst rooms of their lives and helping them find the door, was still the work, was still what she was built for, was not diminished by what had happened to her, but was, if anything, larger. I've been talking to a colleague about starting a foundation, a real one, for survivors of financial fraud targeting grief, widows, orphans, people who lost someone and then lost everything else, to someone who knew how to find them in that window. She paused. Turns out I know something about that particular window. He was quiet for a moment. Then, with something in his voice she had not heard before. Something that was not warmth exactly, but was adjacent to warmth, the way a coal is adjacent to fire. You will be very good at that. I know, she said. And she almost smiled. Not quite, but almost. The specific, almost smile of a woman who has been through something that could have broken her, and discovered somewhere inside the going through that she was built of something that does not break, only bends and holds, and eventually straightens. She pulled her coat tighter against the wind. Take care of yourself, Cavil Park. He looked at her. You as well, Naomi Wells. She turned and walked north. She did not look back. Not because looking back would have cost her something, but because she was done looking back. The future was the direction she was facing, and it was clear, and it was hers, and it was built entirely on what she had chosen to do when she had every reason to choose otherwise. 3 blocks north, she stopped at a coffee cart and ordered a black coffee, and stood on the sidewalk drinking it with both hands around the cup, the way her mother had always held her cup, and looked at the lake at the far end of the street, the dark water under the grey sky, and felt the extraordinary, ordinary fact of being intact. Everything Marcus had taken, the 14 months, the trust, the specific and irreplaceable thing that grief had made her available to lose, none of it was recoverable in the sense of returning to what it had been. She understood that. She had understood it since the marble bathroom floor. You do not recover from certain things. You do not go back to before them. You go forward from them, carrying what they made of you, which is different from what you were before, but is, if you choose it deliberately, stronger. She had chosen it deliberately. The coffee was hot, and the wind was cold, and the city was vast and entirely alive around her. And Naomi Wells stood in the middle of it, in her own coat, with her own money, in her own accounts, and her parents' legacy intact, and 5 women's lives rebuilt enough to be standing. And she drank her coffee, and watched the water, and felt, with quiet and total conviction, exactly like herself. Subscribe to Afro-Korean Narratives and turn on your notifications right now, because the next story is already being built, and it is going to be something you will not want to walk into 10 minutes late. Drop your city in the comments and tell us what hit hardest. Share this with someone who needs a story that doesn't flinch. We will see you there.